Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. You might notice we're in different scenery today because yes, we are indeed outside. So we're doing our math today outside. You might hear some children in the background. Don't worry, they're at the park. I turned the camera around so we can't see the kids, but you might hear them. So I just thought, I don't know, nature and shit, let's do stuff outside. So, last episode we finished up, I don't like your tone. Or, well, I didn't say that, but we showed the direct iteration of the word note and the word tone. And so like being outside, right, you kind of like normalizes you to your environment, right? If something bad happens, you're not looking for the most rigorous math proof, you're just saying the real stuff. And so when we're getting to this definition of what is sensorality, right, there will be no context. There won't be, I have to explain anything, it will just be completely obvious because it's a natural definition. And so we showed the iteration of tone and note, but then we can ask, right, we said, what is the tone of a note, right? And someone will say, I don't like your tone, as I've documented in my language litigation and integration series rather extensively. But this is the natural quality of my voice. I've trained it to be able to sing, and that causes, in addition to the actual logic, the ontological shock, there's the also quality of my resonance of my voice, which throws people, which is strange, but it is what it is. But we asked the question, does information have mass? And so, right, mass has information, but we have to do this differentiation of uniqueness. Right, each of these words represents a different physical process in a different context. That's where they came from. So mass has information, mass is formality, mass has form, right? Energy is information, not form. But more generally, I wanted to ask, what is learning? Right? Learning at the atomic level. Consider myself. Am I adding new information? Am I adding mass? We use the example of if you download an app on your cell phone. Is that download making your cell phone physically heavier at the atomic scale at any amount of mass? And so it's a little easier to kind of work at that intuition from the personal standpoint, right? Am I adding mass, right? Is there some signal coming into me and I'm generating mass? No, I'm a receiver, right? Human beings are kind of like antennas, so to speak. We have a little animal in the background, I'm assuming. Yep, we got a little animal friend. But like when I'm speaking right now into my camera, Brad, am generating the signal. That signal's getting transmitted through this microphone and it's getting received over there, right? But you're programming the transmitter and the receiver. And when it comes to life, you are the transmitter. You are the one generating new information. So information can be created. I mean, that's as apparent as anything could possibly be. So we ask the question, what does conservation really apply to? And in my derivation, I use the word preservation over conservation, right? You preserve a dynamic. Life is a preserved dynamic. When you not die, you're preserving your dynamic. And so when I say, what is learning? Am I getting away from the cell phone downloading an app example, considering myself, am I actually adding more mass to my body, or am I limiting inefficiency? And so learning is resonant, like literally when you go into an MRI machine, magnetic resonance imaging, right? And they do whatever they do to the hydrogen, expose it to a magnetic field, and they all line up. Learning is literally that light bulb, that clicking moment. The light bulb moment is when physically your atoms are more resonant. And so I'm trying to just work at what is exactly these conservation laws. Energy, mass, information. And so, all right, mass changes form, had to be created at one point. Just kind of, and then again, so what is learning, right? Now, on a personal level, you can kind of get to, or even convince yourself and say that learning at the atomic level is literally an arrangement of atoms. You're not adding more mass, you're just making them less scattered, more in time, more resonant. But if you take that, you can't really apply that to a cell phone, right? There's no confusion to a cell phone, it just is. And so when you download an app, you don't have, right, see how we haven't even said sensorality versus sensorality, but that's what we're doing here in our live context, outside in nature. But for the cell phone, it makes no sense to say, is it learning like a human, right? It's just programmed, like there's no choice. A cell phone's not making a choice. And so you couldn't even say, like to me, it makes like like I said, downloading an app, you're adding more megabytes of data. That is I can say a person learns by just limiting inefficiency, but I can't convince myself that downloading an app doesn't add mass because it adds information. But it doesn't though. Like I said, you're generating a signal and your cell phone is a receiver, and it generates information, or reconfigures the atoms on that screen, the ones and zeros, to physically, your physical gates, your transistors, to make your user interface thing go. And so you're literally just talking out loud what this conservation law is really applying to, and then what is learning in general, right? Personally, I can say that it's limiting inefficiency at the atomic level. Are you actually changing the total mass when you put it on a weight, on a scale? Does it actually change that number? Why or why not? I mean, again, I said physics has definitive answers. So just thinking the logic out loud. You can't out-logic what is true and what is real, or what is physically empirical. So adding new information, how does that work at the atomic level? Level is scale. Again, there's no uniqueness to really small or really big, but relatively there is, right? But you would have, again, at the electron level or at the quark bounding level, you would have the same internal dynamic or internal structure, right? Form is structure, right? We have infrastructure. It's a very interesting word, right? Intra versus inter, infrastructure. Form is infrastructure. Cognitive dissonance prevents learning, right? That's very apparent, again, apparent on the personal level, on a human being scale, but like your cell phone's not being cognitively dissonant. It doesn't have some tradition or value structure that it's trying to uphold. And so are you just reconfiguring those atoms to a more resonant movement pattern to store this information? Because clearly information can be created. That's what I'm doing. That's what anybody is doing when they do work. And so I think mass is conserved, but energy, even mass and energy, but information is not conserved because we're creating it right now. I mean, that's what everything in life is doing in its entirety. Learning reorders thought patterns. Is learning adding mass or limiting inefficiency? Just talked about that at length. Dissonance is inefficient, right? Sensorality isn't dissonant or resonant. Just said that with the cell phones. What is the relationship of vibration and filtration? Right, my cell phones, I have polarized lenses. It filters out certain frequencies of the momentum that's being transferred by the sun vibrating right now. So, by the way, a good pair of walking boots and good polarized glasses I recommend for everybody. But what is that relationship, right? Is it, again, whole number frequencies or harmonics, harmonization? How does that play into, again, the symmetry of where all these forms of words, of even symmetric words, sensoritality, sorality, sensorality as itself, you don't see those forms of words. So how does vibration filter that? How does filtering vibrate, or, what is the relationship? What are polarized lenses? Just talked about that. But what is sensationality, right? If I said sensationality, again, you're going to dispel that with an S. And it doesn't apply to, how does the concept of feeling apply to inanimate objects? How does feeling, the way we talk about it, emerge from inanimate objects? So sensationality, again, censored, right? Piers Morgan, uncensored. Disclosure, uncensored, but again, you're just using the wrong word. We're going to iterate those letters and it's going to be the finalizing thing. Obviously, we're not there yet. Sensorality is numb. Sensorality is dumb, right? Human beings can be stupid, but inanimate objects don't feel anything. Sensorality with a C is numb. Numb is feelingless. Sorality is feelingless. Sensationality is feelingless. Senselessness is feelingless, right? So now people will typically say that's senseless with an S. But if you say senseless, people will tell you, again, like senseless violence or whatever context. But senselessness is feelingless. If you don't have senses, you can't feel anything. Sensorality learns, right? I have the capacity to learn. Again, learning is the evidence that you can generate new information. That information isn't conserved one-to-one. Mass and energy, sure, information different. So that's when we have to differentiate these different things. Where language can be horseshoes and hand grenades, we have to make it more precise. Sensorality learns, lens, sense. Speciality is outstanding, sensorality is understanding. If you learn something, you understand it. If you're exceptional, you stand out, you're outstanding. So again, trying to get away from even using these forms, speciality, sensorality, and just, again, literally just integrating it into the ontology we already use. Because ontology is formed by the entire group, right? We're like, I'm just a little satellite here, but the words that we use, that is independent of me. What is the relationship between speciality and sensorality with a C? Again, because clearly sensorality with a C does not have sexual antagonism, so it's not differentiating for sexual antagonism, but if we break down and we remove that prepositional phrase, speciality, differentiation, why does sensorality, why is there different elements? What kind of statement and logical progression can we make there? Sensorality is discrete, meaning, again, my objects have mass gaps, they're independent objects, they have freedom. And speciality is discrete, like inconspicuous is discrete. Sensorality is real, speciality is artificiality. Right, so now we're drawing a difference between reality and artificiality. Artificiality is not reality. Sensorality is intelligent. Speciality is artificially intelligent. And so again, right, when we talk about these irreducibility of word, and you say intelligence, what is it? You can give a bunch of different words. It's your ability to analyze logic. It's your ability to draw new conclusions. It's your ability to make sense of a social situation. However you want to define intelligence. But we have this, again, consolidated concept where you can't break down the word anymore, so you have to add an adjective. Intelligence, whatever it is, you have your definition. Now we have artificial intelligence, right? And so now we've defined speciality as artificial intelligence in the same natural context where that entire phrasing came from. And then we can just ask, what is intelligence? And it doesn't matter, for our purposes right here, it doesn't matter what the operative words is to axiomatize intelligence, which is again another negative kind of prefix, but it's just to show that it's a complete concept, right? You can't break down the concept of intelligence anymore. You have to add an adjective. And so, finishing up for today, we have boredom emerges from redundancy. When do you click off of a video, right? If you're still watching right here, you're probably, who is this random dude on YouTube talking about science? I'm kind of intrigued, I'm kind of not. It's either because you either know exactly who I am and you're watching, but it's not public, or you're just some random Joe walking in. And if you're still watching, it's because of novelty. It doesn't matter if you necessarily agree or disagree, right? If a train wreck happens, you feel bad for the people on the board, but you're still gonna look. And so it's like any information that is new, right? Again, empirically demonstrating that information can be generated. And so we have to make this clear difference between energy, mass, and information. Energy and mass are conserved, information is not. It's preserved. But it's just emergent from the ability, again, of physical objects' ability to move, which stabilize from an initial form, which we call energy. Well, again, form does not apply to energy, but you get what I'm saying. And so you get bored when you hear the same things over again. When you watch a lecture, maybe something that initially catches your attention, and then slowly you're just kind of like after about 10, 15 minutes, you're like, why am I still watching this? Well, they've ran out of novel intuition. They're not demonstrating anything new to you. Good, bad, doesn't matter, it just matters that it's different. That is what you latch onto, that is what you learn. So that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed our outside episode. If kids in the background bother you, get outside and learn, or just be less of a dick. So thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.